All right. Good morning. My name is Alicia, Dr. Sam Miguel. I'm going to get into the nitty gritty. Maybe we can do a separate video of an introduction of who I am. For now, we're going to kind of jump into it. So, this video is going to be focusing on trauma and the neuroscience of trauma. Okay. I'm not going to get into the clinical domains and a lot of the symptoms. I'm going to speed through it. So be ready. Okay. So we have, and I'm going to talk in general terms. We're not going to talk, like I said, not clinical, general. Acute stress disorder. Acute stress disorder, similar to PTSD, except the symptoms are, the main difference is time. Acute stress disorder, 1 month. Okay. PTSD, longer than a month. And usually PTSD, right? It's ongoing, chronic. Whereas acute stress disorder, sometimes it resolves itself. Sometimes, with psychological support, it resolve faster. So just keep that in mind. 2 different time points, a month, more than a month. Also, there's complex trauma, meaning there's multiple traumatic events. Sometimes that also means that an event that occurs right now, you may not consider that you have a trauma in your history, in your past, and something could happen, and you could have some symptoms, but also a part of that is that it'll dig up other trauma. It's going to be like, hey, let's all come hang out because we need to. And that when you look at that picture, it's more complex trauma presentation. Okay, so we're gonna jump through some of the symptoms. An easy way of remembering symptoms is I am not all right. I am not all right. I is for intrusion. A is for avoidance. N is for negative cognition and mood. And A is arousal. And R is reactivity. Okay. So intrusion, just think about it. This could be just thoughts, memories, reliving, just coming in the most random time, the most random place. Sometimes it's stimulated by like the environment, like sensory, a smell, something you see, a color, things like that. Avoidance is, there can be healthy avoidance. There can be also jumping into new things that maybe you didn't do before, but after a kind of a traumatic event, don't know what to do with it. You don't know what to do with this energy, and to avoid it, you don't know what's avoiding. To avoid it, you jump into something that maybe you wouldn't have done before. Let's just say you decide to do a marathon. Never wanted to do a marathon in your life. Okay. It's a healthy way to deal and cope with what happened, whatever it may be. Enjoy a marathon and run, right? And train for it. Something to look forward to, something to cope with, whatever. But when it's in such an unhealthy way that it's just completely, your life is dysfunctional, and maybe you don't recognize it because that's what avoidance does. Is that maybe you train and you train and train, you spend less and less time even at work or at home. It could be rigid eating. It could be on the verge of like I'm gonna say eating disorder, disordered eating, let's say. So it can appear like you're okay. It could also be overworking, taking shifts when it's not necessarily like the benefit of the department, but it's just something that you just as might as well, as might as well just do it. Okay, negative cognition and mood kind of makes is what it sounds like. It's negative cognition, how you view the world. Maybe it's skewed a little bit. Same goes with mood. Maybe it's more anger, irritability, and that kind of wraps in with arousal and reactivity. Arousal is basically your fight, flight, or freeze kind of system is activated, and it just can't turn on. Right? And the reactivity is just, like I said, similar to the arousal, but it's just you're more reactive. Think of it that way. Anger, irritability, sometimes that all kind of falls into it. It just kind of depends on how it presents in that person. It's going to present differently in every person. Um, there, there's some aspects of like a clear cut PTSD, but often I come across people that actually don't even recognize that PTSD. All right, so let's jump ahead. So that was I am not all right. Kind of an easy way to think about it in regards to symptoms. Um, and we can definitely kind of go more into depth of what exactly does that symptom look like. Let's get into it. Oh, actually, before we share, I did want to do a visual, which I kind of like, is it helps to kind of remember of where the amygdala is in the brain. So if you think of your brain as your hand, okay, this is like your, brain stem area. When you put your thumb in the center of your hand, that is very much where the amygdala lies. Okay. When it's over, right? And we can think of this as like the prefrontal cortex, kind of like a little brain. Your fist is your brain. When the amygdala is activated, and I'll talk about this too, is what we call kind of like myopic kind of view, a myopic view. When our amygdala, right, is activated, right, and prefrontal cortex, this is all the complex thinking, decision making, is just all the hardcore thinking stuff that's very complex, is in the front. When your amygdala is sometimes activated, prefrontal cortex is out the window, right? And when we just lose all sight of the decision making, that's when people run into problems with amygdala, because it's a fight, that and hypothalamus, and we'll talk about it. But sometimes we like to think of it as like when the amygdala is activated, people flip their lid, they lose. Okay. Um, and that's because this is what's talking, not all of this. Okay. Now on to pictures really quickly. Okay. So here we have a picture. This is kind of the brain. And you see in the front, orbital frontal cortex. The orbital frontal cortex, it kind of is a combination. Orbital behind the brain, frontal meaning kind of the front of the brain, kind of like what I was talking about, the prefrontal cortex. All in front is the complex thinking. It's also where they say it's personality. And it is also something that's really, really affected and impacted when we're talking about trauma and chronic stress. Okay? Amygdala is another important aspect. Amygdala is what activates that fight, flight, freeze, and sometimes fawn, which people don't talk about. Fawn is basically people freezing. Okay? Amygdala, hippocampus. Hippocampus is the place in which you kind of think of it as like a male center, short-term memory system, then gets time stamped and says, here we go. And then it goes into the long-term memory system. The combination of the amygdala and the hippocampus, as well as the orbital frontal cortex, is a collective kind of these multiple systems that are kind of trying to understand what happened in this traumatic event. What the F happened? So amygdala, body will activate, prefrontal cortex goes out the window, and hippocampus tries to peel it apart. And that's why there is a memory system of short to long, because then, right, the short, as we remember it, short is the kind of more of the acute stress disorder. And then, oops, and then it goes into the long term memory system, which is more the PTSD. So, super quick. All right. If you guys have questions, y'all can email me or send them to Heather, and I will do another video kind of extending off of this, and we'll kind of talk about kind of even other things. All right, y'all. Have a great day.